It is one of the least known and most unexpected effects of climate change, the emergence of individuals whose ethnicity has evolved. Oumarou SASSOUBA is one of these climatic mutants. He was born a Bouzou, that is to say, a fisherman and a rice grower. And today, this notary from Kandara, a village in the south of Mali, is reduced to growing millet and buying fish to feed himself. The Kadus are millet growers regarded as boorish by the Bouzous. Even though the joking relationship between the Bouzous and the Kadus lessens the impact of such an illusion, it is nevertheless the expression of a tragic reality. In Kandara, because of the absence of water, the soils which suited the rice-growing culture of the region have been turned into millet fields, a less demanding local cereal. Overnight, these fishermen peasants who used to reap close to 5 tons of rice per hectare have to content themselves with hardly 400 kilograms from the same size of land. Their lack of experience in the cultivation of millet and the clay texture of the soils account for their low yield. Baba KAMIA, chief of the Kandara village, is bitter, and there is no doubt about the reason. A prosperous farmer some 30 years ago, he owned cattle, plows, plow oxen, motorbikes, bicycles, and spent money lavishly. Dembele is a rural engineer. He had this to say about the historic fertility of this region.
C'était une zone d'opulence. Il y a un vieux qui a l'habitude de me dire à Kandara que dans le temps, quand vous voyez une dame ou bien un monsieur avec un panier de mie, de sorgho, soyez sûr que dans cette famille, il y a un cheval. Parce que le sorgho était destiné seulement à l'alimentation du cheval. Eux, ils ne mangent que le riz. Eux, ils ne connaissent que le riz et l'élevage. Donc le riz qui est produit là était troqué en partie vers Massina contre le sorgho qui vient juste pour l'alimentation du... Bref, une zone de prospérité.
Today, horses cannot continue to ignore the grass as they too had to adapt and content themselves with a few handfuls of millet instead of full baskets. Fishermen on the banks of the Bani River are also lamenting. At the beginning, when this region was prosperous, there was a 7-kilometer-long canal built in 1948 by the French colonial administration. The canal used to flood the lands on both sides of its course. The silt from the Bani River fertilized the soils and allowed a record rice production. But as time went on, the untended canal became full of sand. To make matters worse, the rains became scarce. In 1973, with the great drought in the Sahel and the fall of the level of the Bani River, the farmers noticed after sowing their rice that the water was not flooding the sides of the canal as usual. How do we account for the tragedy of the Kandara in a country like Mali, which has more or less an average of 50 to 55 billion cubic meters of water carried along by the Niger River?
Le riz qu'ils ont toujours connu nécessite, pour son évolution, une lame d'eau qui ne se crée plus. La plaine est de moins en moins inondée, et même si elle est inondée, c'est de très courte durée. Et donc, au bout de la chaîne, les gens ne peuvent plus pratiquer la riziculture, donc ils sont partis. Les gens sont partis. Maintenant, partir est une des stratégies des producteurs. Changer en lieu et place du riz dans cette zone, ils sont en train de tenter, tant bien que mal, de faire des céréales sèches, etc., etc.
Those who stayed on are fighting, struggling to clean up the canal with their bare hands.
Mais ka fa yiti do sisan ka fa tisse en fay we joro gurina nya adayelana yibita nyarta milla bon sankele me on nana dugube anye do ba kurunta kani joron fle ale noyni anya sigina mburu we san anya sigi kata fi yoro mina yi tarakata joy jima skata ma woro kan ya adome ka kubna sida on te skata kina mburu parce que machine yara fa ka machine jame yani mburu donc am te sera.
Powerless, certainly, but not discouraged, the inhabitants of Kandara are trying everything to bounce back. They diversify their productions, growing peanuts, manioc, and a little pluvial rice. Some of them go to other villages in the region to grow rice. They rent 1 hectare of land for 25,000 sefa, which is equivalent to $50 for the duration of the whole season. And for what? 1 or 2 bags of rice for the owner in case of a good harvest. To rediscover one's cultural identity is surely not an easy thing.
I had no jido for a teacher for being war. It of Robert to in the Niji door what in a coffee without for no affair. I can't go to Tado. I know one money away to $4 for Jika Gure. This you go and what when you go or even I saw near Dover, even I saw it a Moroccan. Don't Dover, if I saw it a Moroccan day. I would ask a Jagger to get Havana.
This is the second best that the peasants accept for lack of anything better.
But bro, yeah, don't you can go down. Mabra can go down. A bishika don't get graph between it. What a day. For a clear Kashika Bushire, Kanika Yora. What a irritable.
And what about the women?
You don't want me. And then I shall to Karam. I'm going to be like a duberella. The villa on Villa. Monquanti do one. Sando domina solo. I be some flala. That is all. Where I one banker. Uncle, yet a second make you. Come over, walk at China Yara. That's all I can number.
Guardians of the household, women are also fighting to the point that they become the first bread earners.
Monsieur Tumbambro, and Bishika Kikanai. Kabi, and be mina. Young year, I miss Tiki Manka. Her name is she came in Bruby Michu Adama, and the company from our Berti Kawabi. One best for Michu Bruby, neither from a Batik Kawabi. Oh, but new Guerenana, we are doing Michuta, Dundisho Mo. Here don't do the patio. Not done bad the pine, not say your dry, it won't be second. Nation and a nebula banner, what Michu Bisica doke. I'm Antun miserable always under maybe, Neta, she better than one be. Misoa, come over your mission in Minunga, who banned them with a word no. I never enter Barton care.
The chief's wife is a perfect example of the resourceful wife. She cooks steamed rice, which she sells, and goes as far as putting herself into debt in order to bear the expenses of the family between 2 harvests, when the granaries are getting emptier and the work in the fields requires a lot of effort.
And now we miss 15 minutes. Caddy came on Nana for what you mean. ubisha na kanoi ne watanda ma chama yashi ne na yado na fe na kadu.
But the inhabitants of Kandara only dream about one thing, the dredging of the canal. Tireless lobbyists, the chief of the village has already gone to Bamako to meet the deputy of his district, to Mopti and to Jene to meet the government technical services to plead the cause of his canal. He ran a real marathon that got no success until now. The presence of a television team is thus an unhoped-for occasion to once again pass on his message.
Anka yingani ajaranye me akana ke yingan gwansanyi basigi ma kummi bininkan nyamma nanna wo chako yini ke yinkan wo chako da ado gure srale aka undeme pour que ambisga hina soro kagumi basigi nya ay hina soro ambetaru afana ne ambetaru atika makli martaru.
The activism of the chief's village could soon be crowned with success.
J'ai eu la chance d'être commis à l'étude du seuil de Djenné, autour duquel nous avons élaboré un schéma directeur pour l'ensemble du bassin inférieur du Bani. Et dans ce schéma directeur, nous avons établi des zones à vocation, en collaboration avec les collectivités, avec les institutions, tout le monde, des zones de vocation de telle ou telle activité, agriculture, élevage, pêche, etc., reboisement et autres trucs. Et maintenant, à l'intérieur de ce schéma, il y a donc l'aménagement du Grand Pondori, y compris donc la zone de Kandara, qui va être remise en eau à partir d'un canal qui va être pris du Bani vers la zone et de seuil qui va être construit. Ça permettra de revitaliser, de revivifier cette contrée, et je suis certain qu'avec ce projet, alors le Kandara risque de revoir son passé récent, même s'il serait dans d'autres conditions. Mais ce qui est certain, c'est que ceci sera obligatoirement, enfin, sera certainement un des résultats de ce programme.
This is a good reason to renew the old habits with hope. Live fully and relive one's identity as a Buzo, rice grower and fisherman at the same time.